Hello, everyone. My name is Ian Rowe.
And I'm Nique yours.
And welcome to The Invisible Men, where we make the achievements of incredible men invisible no more. Hello, this is Ian Rowe, and welcome to another episode of The Invisible Men. I am very pleased to be joined by my colleague.
Hello, I'm Nique yours. So happy to be here.
And we're very excited to be bringing yet another episode of The Invisible Men, where we make the incredible feats of people who you may not know invisible no more. And today we are joined by our colleague, Troy Stovall, who is actually part of the original The Invisible Men. Nique, you and I were actually at business school years ago, and we had this idea to create a documentary years ago to introduce this idea of Black excellence. Troy was part of that original vision, and he's joining us today. And Troy has just been named the executive director and CEO of Maryland TEDCO, which is a great technology organization that Troy will tell us about. And at his ceremony, they introduced Troy as someone who is an inspiring leader, a person of integrity and character, and someone who rolls his sleeves up to solve hard problems. Can't imagine a greater person to come talk to us about Black excellence. So Troy, welcome, and tell us a little bit about your story and how you got to be where you are.
Well, first of all, it is, I'm a man of faith. And so I'm blessed to be able to be at this point, but I'm even more blessed to be able to call the two of you friends. And even after all these years of frankly not having much communication, to be able to still connect as if we just saw each other yesterday. And that's the definition of bonding and brotherhood, that we can still be connected, and more than happy to be a part of this. And when you guys, as you know, when you called, it wasn't a question of if, it was a question of figuring out a date. And so I'm also elated that the two of you continue to drive this conversation that, frankly, in this year of 2020, which has just been an amazing year on a variety of dimensions, that this conversation has even more relevance as in that. So with that, just real quick on TEDCO. So TEDCO is a 22-year-old organization the state of Maryland set up to basically, at a real simple level, I'm a venture capitalist. We invest in early stage technology companies, and we have a variety of different funding mechanisms. We do everything from getting stuff out of our great institutions of higher learning here in Maryland, out of the labs, and commercializing those, to looking at stem cell opportunities in regenerative medicine, to looking at early stage opportunities for Black and women-owned businesses. And we can put anywhere from $15,000 up to $1.5 million into these early stage companies. And these are many times pre-revenue opportunities that we're investing in. And on top of that, we do these wraparound services. So we do everything from loaned executives to roundtables to ensure the success not only of these individual entities, but the overall innovation culture here in Maryland. So that is what we do in TED. So I'm excited, as you can tell, about being a part of this. And as far as my journey, real quick, that I'm a kid from 77033. Folks that don't know, that's the zip code in Southeast Houston, South Park, Sunnyside, the hood. There's no other way to say it. The hood. And that's who and what I am, and I've been blessed to be able to go to places like Southern Methodist University and Stanford and Harvard Business School, where I met these two great individuals. And along the way, worked at places like Bell Labs and Southwestern Bell and McKinsey, had my own firm, started a private equity firm with a high net worth individual named John Palmer, who's the former ambassador to Portugal, have been able to be the C-level executive at several HBCUs, including Howard University, Jackson State University, and the University District of Columbia. So I've had, I love the journey that I've had, and that, frankly, that's the journey, and all those elements have allowed me to be here at TEDCO. And because I bring all those elements, sometimes I'm an engineer or a computer scientist. Sometimes I'm a business person. Sometimes I'm a consultant. Sometimes I'm, a venture capitalist. Sometimes I'm working with the higher education. So all those pieces, Ian and Nique, have brought me to this point in my journey. But what I'll close with is, And I think I said this when we were talking about Darryl. You know, my mama told me a long, long time ago. My mama's passed away. God rest her soul. Was that we put on this planet for one reason and one reason only, and that's to make a difference in one person's life. The challenge is you don't know when that one person is going to come into your life, or you know what they're going to do with you. And so my mama told me you have to make a difference in everybody's life you touch. And so that's what's driven me. That continues to drive me. That continues to have these types of conversations. And so I'm appreciative for you guys reaching out to me again. And just again, thank you all for what you do for the community.
No, thank you. Thank you. I mean, when you say you were in the hood, what was it that was it? Did you have this vision then of where you would be right now?
Wow. I distinctly remember about growing up. So we grew up, it was nothing special. It was just simple home. Mom, parents were divorced, but dad was around. He wasn't, not around. He was around. But it was my mom and my sister, on a daily basis. And there was this guy in our neighborhood, a guy named Dan Mask. And Dan worked for IBM. And he also did Amway, too. And Dan ended up moving out. He and his family had a wife, 2 kids, about the same age as my sister and I. And I'll never forget, Ian, they moved out. And they moved into this area of Houston at that time was developing called Missouri City, which at that time was kind of developing Sugar Land. And they had this wonderful 2-story house and, this pool table. And that was to me like, wow. And I never forget going to the house and they had this thing called cable TV. And I'm like, wow, what is this thing? They had a remote control. And so that was, and I think we talked about this with Darryl. I mean, the challenge that so many of us have is we're limited by the view that we have blocks our vision, right? The view of what we have in front of us blocks what we could be. And what allowed me to escape that was my mom. She sent me to a private all-boys school there in Houston called St. Thomas. And to this day, I'm very active with St. Thomas because that really changed my trajectory. That changed who and what I am. I became their first Black student body president and a whole bunch of other first Black things, which were sad that in the 80s, that still was the first Black was still, relevant, but it was, or still is. Got the first Black vice president, the first female Black vice president. So who knew? And so that changed my trajectory, Ian, and IQ, and that opened up my eyes. I talk all the time about, so many of us, there's actually a study about this, that most of us will experience 3 to 5 zip codes in our lifetime, really experience them. I've well exceeded that with my life, but people that the Darryls that we're talking about barely experience 1 zip code. So you think about that, barely experience 1 zip code in their life. So their whole frame of reference is a zip code. And zip codes, Ian, have become many little prisons because they've created fences around them. And we call them now school boundaries and things like that. And those structures, those elemental structures, we don't think about them, but they create inhibitions for people to see beyond what they could really see and see the rest of the world beyond their zip code.
I love that reference, and I've never heard it articulated that way. Well, of course, brother, you opened by saying how appreciative you are to be with us, but to see you again is an absolute joy for me. And given your background and your technology base, your computer science base, I hear a lot, because I still spend a lot of time in Silicon Valley, that, hey, a college education is no longer relevant. You need to go learn how to code. You need to learn some machine learning. How do you think about, as a technologist and also a highly educated gentleman, this dilemma of does college matter anymore?
Well, yeah, we don't have time for we could spend that's like a whole bottles of wine and a whole case of wine on this one. So, it's a tough one because I just literally just gave a speech on this here in Maryland. And I talked a lot about this, Nique, when I just left the University of the District of Columbia. And I am in the boat that the job market is changing, right? It is foundationally changing. And that's putting pressure on this economic structure that the 4-year institutions have, which has been, you got to start as a freshman and end as a senior and get this thing called a bachelor's degree. And, I'll pivot just a little bit, if I may. I talk about, I've got an interesting situation at TEDCO where about more than half of the folks at TEDCO are under 40. And my observation of those people under 40 are the following. A, they ain't going to work for one company for 30 some years, get the gold watch and retire. That model is dead, right, for them. Two, they grew up like my son and like probably your kids, they grew up in the video game generation. And what I mean by that is the accumulation of skills, they go to the next level, they go to the next level, they go to the next level. And if they can't get to the next level, they get bored. And so as managers, it's incumbent on us to rethink this notion of a job. And it's not a series of things to do, it's a series of skills to attain. And we have to find a different way because we have this very militaristic structure of how things have to progress, right? And the titles and the salaries. When in reality, we have to think more broadly and more linearly about how skills are attained. And so to your question, I'm in the camp that there are certain jobs where certifications, where we have to create pathways and a different structure that allows someone to get certain skills, to go get the job, and then find a way on their time and on their economics to attain whatever they may need to attain, whether that's an associate's degree or a bachelor's degree or whatever, as opposed to this rigid structure we have now. We have to become more flexible, and that's going to be very difficult for higher ed to adapt to. But I'm in the camp that, and we use this term workforce. And this is one of those words that have racial connotations to it and stigma attached to it because we use it. And times when white people use it, they're really talking about low-end jobs, entry-level jobs for Black and brown people. That's what they're really trying to say. But you and I and Ian are all part of the workforce. We are. I don't care if you got 5 PhDs, you're part of the workforce. And so my close with is, to Darryl would be, you first, there's a conversation of what you're passionate about. Where's your passion? Where should your passion take you? And then have a conversation about what's that pathway that allows you to get to that passion. And I haven't mentioned jobs or academic stuff. And then we can talk about what's that academic and skill attainment path that's necessary for Darryl to start to pursue his dream. That's the conversations we need to be having with our young men. But we don't want to have that conversation. We want to have a conversation that there is this only one path and one path on. Look, let's be real clear so people don't throw too many electronic bananas at me. You have to get educated. This is not a negativity on not getting it. You have to get educated because there's all kinds of economics and studies that show that there is a correlation between being educated and attaining economic success. What I'm arguing is there may be more than one way to get there, and there is no singular way for any one body to get there. That is what I'm arguing.
No, absolutely, absolutely. And there are a lot of building blocks that help kids develop that passion, that perseverance. You started by saying you're a man of faith. Mm-hmm. Talk about that a little, because it's not something that, as we have a national reckoning on race, larger questions facing kids of all races, that developing a faith relationship or a faith commitment is not something that's often spoken about. How did you cultivate that? And what role do you think faith should play in helping young people develop their passions and what they will persevere at?
Yeah, I think that's an outstanding question, because you're right, it doesn't come up a lot. And this isn't, my comments aren't to be proselytizing any one particular, faith. People should make that decision as to what they're comfortable. But I think I'm hoping that people would see that there's something bigger than me. That's the point, something bigger than me and something that I can have bigger than me. And for me, it started, look, I grew up in, like I said, in Texas, and I grew up a black Catholic in Texas, in the South, in the 70s, 80s. You talk about an anomaly. I was an anomaly. And then on top of that, y'all gonna love this, I actually wanted to be a priest, to the point I actually went to monastery. I went to seminary for a day and a half. And the whole chastity and poverty thing, and the silence thing, I couldn't handle it. So, I've been brought up through the church, through the Catholic Church, and there are, to your point, there are ethical things. Again, I disagree on a lot of things that the Catholic Church has in it. I'm very disappointed what's happened with the issue with the priests and those issues. But to answer your question, the moral grounding that it gave me the ability to understand the respect of all the peoples. I spent my day the last 2 days wishing happy Hanukkah to all my Jewish friends, right? And they love it. And, I tell people all the time, the best time I ever had was at a Seder, man, and a Jewish wedding. Those were two of the best times I've ever had in my life, hanging out with my Jewish friends. They know how to party. So it's about opening our minds up to that and being able to have something that's beyond yourself, Ian. But to your the latter part of your question, I would say one of the best compliments someone ever gave me, it was actually a Jewish woman on one of the boards on a firm that I'd served with. And she came to me, this happened just a couple of years ago. She says, "You really lead with your faith. You never talk about it, but how you carry yourself, how you deal with others, how you deal with problems, it's clear you have that." And I'm telling you, man, that was one of the best compliments someone has ever given me. This is from some white Jewish woman, right? And so that's the answer to the question, because it's how you carry yourself and how you present yourself. My daddy used to tell me, you can't, how people regard you, you can't do anything about how you or Q think of me. I can do nothing about. What I can do something about is how I carry myself. And that's more what we got to teach these young men. You got to carry yourself a certain way. You got to present yourself a certain way. And you can't worry about how people are going to think about you, because they've already made up their mind about you when they saw a black man walking into the room. They've already scoped you out because you're a black man walking into the room. And ain't nothing you can do about that. But you can do something about how you carry yourself. And I think that's what faith has done for me.
Have you ever felt crippled by your race, given that kind of thing?
Man, yeah. Look, dude, like all of us, I've been stopped driving while black, driving while jogging, driving while walking, driving while shopping, driving while living. Okay, I've been.
No, right. No, true. But have you ever felt crippled by it, meaning that you couldn't move forward even in those situations that you just talked about?
Crippled. That's an interesting way that you phrase the question. I'll use it this way. I was momentarily paralyzed. I think there was a paralysis that happened around that moment. There was a paralysis that happened maybe for, some time. And I think the paralysis was a combination of anger, a combination of, a bunch of 4-letter words. So I definitely lost my religion at that time. A combination of, why and questioning to you, maybe that is paralysis, a questioning of why this still happens in pick a year. Because I think the frustrating thing for me in my conversation with because I've tried to have some very serious conversation with my white friends in this year of 2020, and part of them it has been, calling frankly a spade, and I'm very clear that I've been very clear in my language that we have a white supremacist structure that allows for white privilege, and I separate those two. There's a white supremacist structure that allows for white privilege. And so that's the crippling effect, Ian, is that we've not been bold enough or strong enough to have a direct conversation about white privilege and white supremacy. They are real. They are tantamount. Unless you speak to them, we have contributed to them. And that is the paralysis and that is the crippling effect. And so we have to be able to have the honest conversations with our white friends and frankly, some of our black friends as well, because some of them just as lost as there's some lost black people out there too, that this is real. And I had a quote as somebody sent me the other day that white supremacy will never be dealt with until white people see it as a problem they have to solve versus feeling they have to be empathetic with black people. That's exactly right. Until there's something that's problematic for them, we won't really solve this thing.
Wow. Okay. Well, let me just have one.
I'm sorry.
I know Nique wants to do a speed round, but so thinking about that from the perspective of a Darryl, of a 16-year-old, when you hear that, if you're a black kid and you hear that, not until white people decide that white supremacy is a problem that they have to solve, will that problem go away. What does that do to a young black person's mindset about what they can achieve, even because let's say that day never comes? Yeah,
they're paralyzed. They're crippled. Using your words, that is part of the crippling effect. But what we have to show them is that a Troy, that a Nique, that an Ian recognizes that crippling effect, and yet we rise, And so you look. I say all the time, gentlemen, that I don't mind playing the ball game as long as I understand the rules. And if the rules are stacked against me, that's fine. But at least I know the rules. And so to answer your question, what we have to do is expose the Darryls of the world to the rules. Let them understand the challenges. But as you talked about, Nique, understand that this is about, you got to get educated. You got to have a plan for yourself. You got to have an ethical boundaries about yourself. You got to have clarity as to where you are passionate about. And you can't allow, you're going to get knocked down. You're going to lose. You're going to get knocked down. The question isn't, do you get knocked down? The question is, as my old minister friend used to say, do you fall face down or do you fall face up? Which one do you want? Because when you fall face up, guess what? You can look up and you can put my hand up and somebody can pull you up. That's the difference. And I want the Darryls, when they fall down, that they fall down with their face up, so they see a Nique, they see an Ian, they see a Troy, to help them stand up. That's what I want to tell Darryl.
Very good. Well, we will transition to our speed round.
This is not the fun part.
No, this is fun. Just a couple of subjects or people, and you select the one that resonates more in your heart, and you tell us and Darryl why. So I'll start with a real easy one, Troy. Harvard or Stanford? You got
to Stanford for the weather.
Fair enough. Malcolm or Martin?
I'll go with my fraternity brother, Martin.
Now you got to give me the why.
That's a difficult choice because the challenge there is people have this one view of Malcolm, and they don't have the view of Malcolm after he came back from his journey. And I think Malcolm was more like Martin than people really understand at the end of his journey. So that's what.
Fair. Economic development, which you've talked a lot about today, or civil rights?
Economic development. And actually, I call it, on that point, I've just changed our website and our mission. I actually believe TEDCO is about economic empowerment, because I'm very specific, because at the end of the day, what we do at TEDCO, we invest in one person's dream to uplift that one person. Development is a larger strategic regional thing. I just want to make one person and one person make it happen. So economic development, economic empowerment.
Very good. And the last one is Jay-Z or Kanye?
Oh, Z. Oh, please, Jay-Z.
Give us the why.
Jay-Z. I mean, although that's not fair, because I actually have fallen in love with Kanye in the last month since he did his conversion. So that's actually more of I was too fast on that one. I'm gonna go with Kanye. I like his transition. I like the way he's thinking about life, and so I want to give him the benefit of the doubt that he's moving in a different direction.
What did you think about his presidential campaign?
God, everybody entitled to do what the hell they want. This is a free country. God bless them. It was the same thing. We thought Jesse Jackson was crazy when he ran, and so it didn't bother me. I thought it was more joking than it was anything serious, because he didn't get on anybody's. Didn't get on 1 or 2 states. I think maybe. So he was playing out there. He got enough money to go play. Let him play. Who cares? We got a big issue. I'm sitting here waiting to see if the Supreme Court is going to laugh at this madness, this my home state's madness that they just did, filing this crazy lawsuit to try to overturn the 4 states. I'm waiting on the Supreme Court to say, please stop this madness. Stop this madness.
All right, Troy.
Thank you.
Well, this has been great. I want to ask you, just so you can the last question, and it is now pointed to. If Darryl were on this call right now, he had just listened to you. He heard the importance of being a person of faith, of getting educated. But I want to come back to this idea of being crippled.
Yep.
as we wait for this realization for the white community to renounce the white supremacy ship, I want to keep coming back to that, because my fear is if that narrative continues to push, it invariably puts young people of color in a position where we're waiting for someone else to influence our destiny.
Yep.
And part of what we want to do here is show that, of course, what your actions matter. It's not that these other issues don't, but your actions matter most of all. So what would you tell Darryl? He's 16. He's in the hood. Maybe he's in Houston right now, where you grew up. And he's seeing all these stories. He's seeing what happened to George Floyd. Like, what is his vision of the future, and how can he best control it?
So, Ian and Nique, I say that only, I'm married. I've been married coming on 25 years. So we don't get a choice with our family, right? But the only real choice you really have in life is your friends. And Darryl needs to surround himself. I have this mantra that my mom taught me, that Ian, that you can only rise to the highest level of the lowest level of the people you associate yourself with. That's why I associate myself with you, brother, so I can rise up to y'all. And so my point to Darryl is, too many times, back to this zip code thing, right? Darryl's got to find a way to see beyond the zip code boundary lines, beyond 77033. He's got to put around him individuals who right now he can look up to the Dan Mask of the world. He needs a Dan Mask. He needs to see something beyond that, that I couldn't have done. He needs to see the Ians and the Troys that, yes, I'm sitting here in this, Bowie, Maryland, beautiful home, wife, 2 kids, all this other stuff, crazy red jacket. But I grew up, in a home that had a hole in the roof, of it. I grew up in a home that the air conditioning during the summertime in Houston didn't work half the time. I grew up with a mama who didn't have a college education and worked 3 jobs just to send me to a private school that, to this day, I don't know what she paid for me to go to that private school, because the priest, she made a deal with the priest to send me there. And I surrounded myself with individuals who I still have in my life today, who my pediatrician, who's like my surrogate dad, who never let me realize, made me realize that I was more than what I was in that neighborhood. So Darryl's got to find him somebody or bodies who can tell him, you are more than this. And it doesn't matter what the white man does. You can be more. You can be what you want to be. And so the chains, the shackles that we want to call them, the shackles that the zip codes impose upon you, can be unleashed if you intentionally go out and get that education, get those individuals. You're going to fail, but that's okay, because there's enough of a community that wants to pick you up, Darryl.
All right. Well, on that note, Troy, thank you very much. Thank you for making yet another special episode of The Invisible Men. And Nique, you want to say your...
Well, just again, thank you, brother Troy. An absolute pleasure. Your energy, your passion, it's unchanged, and it's as infectious and valued as ever. So thank you.
Well, again, thank you two brothers for continuing this conversation, and it's one that's needed in this year and in the years to come.
All right. I'm Ian Rowe, resident fellow of the American Enterprise Institute.
And I'm Nique Fajors.
Thank you, Troy.
Thank you, guys. Have a good holiday.
Thank you for watching another episode of The Invisible Men. You can find other episodes at the AEI podcast channel on YouTube, or the website invisible.men, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts.